away. And the last thing on my mind today, it always goes to those who don't deserve. It's the opposite of how you feel when the pain they cause is just too real. It takes everything for you just to say the word. These are the opening lines to Matthew West's hit single, Forgiveness. They reminded me of my own struggles to forgive those who had wronged me. And today, if it's all right with you, I'd like to share with you my journey of anger, reconciliation, and forgiveness, in the hopes that I might encourage you with the fact that although forgiveness is a difficult choice and a process, it is also the means by which we can be freed from our burdens. I always looked up to my sister as a kid. Because we're 14 years apart, she kind of seemed like a second mom to me. She was always there when I wanted to talk to someone, always there for support during a difficult time, and I always knew that she genuinely cared about my life. That's what made the summer of 2003 so difficult. Right after my sister graduated from high school, our family was invited to attend a Labor Day picnic with our local church. A few hours before we were going to leave, my sister said that she wasn't feeling well and needed to stay home. Well, naturally, we just left without her, had a great time, and then when we came back, we found something terribly wrong. We found that my sister was gone. A few days later, we received a call saying that she had run away to Chicago and wasn't planning on coming back. At that moment, my heart tore to shreds. It was literally like my heart went through a paper shredder. As a 5-year-old at the time, I didn't really understand why my sister left. All I knew was that the person who I thought loved me the most had just disappeared on me. I began to develop an extreme sense of abandonment, to the point where I clutched on to anyone and everyone in my life, afraid that they were going to disappear on me too. And then when I was 10, I began to feel a growing sense and bitterness towards my sister, solely because I realized that sense of abandonment that I felt when I was 5 was caused by a choice. It would have been different had my sister been kidnapped or murdered, but the fact that she made a conscious decision to leave our family made me boil with anger. She hadn't disappeared as I thought as a 5-year-old. She decided to turn her back on everyone from her past, her family, her friends, everyone, and just leave them in the dust. She didn't care about the effects that her decision had on anyone else. She only cared about herself. For years, I hated her. I never spoke to her by choice, and I figured since she didn't want to have anything to do with our family, I didn't need to have anything to do with hers. So, when she got married and started having kids, I never spoke to them in person, I never called them, and I never sent them gifts for their birthdays or for Christmas. That was my mindset for 10 years. Until recently, I was prepared to spend the rest of my life ignoring my own flesh and blood. And then, about a year ago, I read Ephesians 4:32, which says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another just as God in Christ forgave you." At that moment, you could say a light bulb kind of went off in my head. I realized that, in a sense, I was no better than my sister. Even before I was born, I had abandoned God's love for me because of my sinful state. God could have turned his back on me, just like I had turned my back on my sister. He could have said, since you don't want to have anything to do with me, I don't want to have anything to do with you. But you know what? He didn't. Instead, he sent his most prized possession just to win me back. He chose to look past the wrongs that I had done, the wrongs that deserved death. He chose to forgive me. My sister didn't deserve that, but for years I treated her like she did. I knew I needed to forgive her. I'll be the first to admit it wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination. I cannot tell you how many nights I spent in my room, tired, confused, and utterly broken as I tried to create closure. But it was during those long nights, through God's grace, that I was finally able to come to terms with my past. I was finally able to overlook the wrongs that my sister had done. I was finally able to obtain the peace that I had been longing for so long. I was finally able to forgive. I know that God put me in that situation for a reason. It was all a part of His plan to make me stronger as an individual and to encourage others through my experiences. I'm sure that all of us in this room have had someone in our lives either betray or leave us. And somewhere deep down inside, all hurting. But you know what? That pain doesn't have to define us. We don't have to be trapped by our anger and bitterness, because it's that anger and bitterness which forces us to live a life of misery and sorrow in the first place. We cannot fully live in the present until we have let go of our past. For most people, anger is a sign of strength. But I would like to argue that it takes more strength to forgive than to hold on to your anger, because forgiveness doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to move on. As I've mentioned before, forgiveness isn't easy. About 3 weeks ago, my sister sent an email to our family stating that she doesn't want us to visit her children ever again. To tell you the truth, it's been really hard. It's hard when your 5-year-old nephew calls you up on Easter Sunday and says, "Boy, Aunt Savannah, I sure wish you could come and visit us." And you have to bite your tongue from explaining to him that it's his mother's fault that you can't visit him in person ever again. Forgiveness is a constant battle. Every single day, I have to make a conscious decision not to let my sister's wrongs and decisions rule over my life. To not keep account of her wrongs, not to hold them against her, and not to ignore her as a form of revenge, even though that might be what she's doing to me. Even though forgiveness is a difficult choice in the process, it is also the means by which we can be freed, and I can be freed from my burdens. And you know what? It can be the same way for you too. I don't know what your situation is right now. You might be having troubles with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, anywhere in your social life. And forgiveness might seem like the last possible thing on your mind right now. But I would like to encourage you to take that first step, to forgive. I like how Matthew West summed it up at the end of his song. It'll clear the bitterness away. It can even set the prisoner free. There's no end to what its power can do. So let it go and be amazed by what you see through eyes of grace. The prisoner that are really free is you. Thank you.